It's 6:58 on a Monday morning. You're standing in front of the vending machine in the break room, digging through a pocket for exact change. $1.75. The machine doesn't take cards. It never has in 11 years, and nobody's ever bothered fixing that. On your wrist is a $19 digital watch you bought at a drugstore 4 years ago. The strap is cracked along the fold line. You've thought about replacing it a dozen times and never have. Your coworker walks in, holding a coffee that costs more than your lunch. He glances at your watch, then at his phone, and says nothing. He doesn't need to. You already know what he's thinking. What he doesn't know is that your brokerage account crossed $340,000 last week. He also doesn't know you've already decided the date you're leaving. Not this job. Working, period. 14 months from now, at 44, roughly 20 years before anyone else in this building plans to stop. Nobody here knows any of that. You've made sure of it. This isn't a story about getting rich. It's a story about what happens to a person once the money stops being the hard part and something else becomes the hard part instead. Level 1. The $30 that mattered. Rewind. You're 23. The watch is new then, still shiny, bought because your old one broke, and $19 felt like the responsible choice over $80. Your paycheck lands every other Friday. $1,140 after taxes. Rent is $650. Groceries, gas, a phone bill, and whatever's left disappears somewhere you can never quite name by the following Wednesday. One Friday, on a whim, you download a banking app and set up an automatic transfer. $30, every payday, into an index fund you picked because a coworker mentioned it once, offhand, like it wasn't important. $30 is nothing. $30 is also, that month, the difference between a full tank of gas and driving on fumes for 4 days, timing the light so it doesn't hit E on a hill. You almost cancel the transfer twice. You don't. 6 months later, your car needs a water pump. $410. You don't have it sitting anywhere convenient. You put it on a card at 22% interest and spend the next 4 months paying it down before you touch the index fund contribution again. This is the part nobody puts in the highlight reel. The scarcity years. The years where $40 decides whether you eat out or eat rice for 4 days straight. Here's what's actually happening underneath it though. Every dollar that goes into the index fund is a dollar that will never again cost you a full day's labor to replace. It just sits there and multiplies, slowly, without asking anything else of you. Every dollar you put on a credit card at 22% does the opposite. It costs you more of tomorrow to pay for today. Same number, opposite direction. You don't fully understand that yet. You just know the $30 transfer makes you a little uneasy every 2 weeks, and a little more comfortable every few months, in a way you can't quite explain to anyone. By the end of the year, the account holds $780. You check it more than you'd like to admit. Some nights, twice. Level 2. The years nobody noticed. 3 years pass, the way years do when nothing is happening on the outside. You're 26 now. The transfer went from $30 to $75 somewhere around your second raise, and you barely felt it because you never let the raise touch your checking account in the first place. It moved straight into the transfer before you had a chance to miss it. This is also the year you meet Ellen. Ellen's 61, runs the inventory system 2 floors up, and has worked at the company almost as long as you've been alive. She drives a Honda with 190,000 miles on it and eats the same turkey sandwich every day at the same table. Nobody thinks about Ellen's money because Ellen never talks about money. One afternoon, waiting for the elevator, she notices you checking your phone, the brokerage app, though she doesn't know that. Started early? She asks. Trying to, you say. She nods slowly, like she's confirming something she already suspected. Most people wait until it feels urgent. By then it's expensive to catch up. That's the whole conversation. 10 seconds. She gets in the elevator and doesn't mention it again for years. You don't know it yet, but you'll think about that sentence more than almost anything anyone says to you in your 20s. This is also when you meet Danny, hired the same month as you, same starting salary almost to the dollar. Danny's easy to like, generous, funny, first to buy around after a good shift. When he gets his first real raise, he leases a truck, $540 a month, black, enormous, the kind that turns heads in the parking lot at 7 a.m. You don't judge him for it. He's not reckless. He works hard, and he's enjoying the money he earns, which is a completely reasonable thing to do with money you earned. That's what makes the next several years interesting to watch. You're not smarter than Danny. You just built a system that runs whether you're paying attention to it or not, and he built a lifestyle that requires the paycheck to keep showing up exactly on schedule, forever, without interruption. Nothing dramatic happens this year. Nothing happens the year after that either. The account grows a little every month. Nobody notices. There's nothing to announce. It's just another Tuesday and then another one, 40 more times in a row. You get a small raise at 28 and bump the transfer to $150 without discussing it with anyone, because there's no one to discuss it with. By 29, the balance is $31,400. You didn't do anything dramatic to get there. You just didn't stop. Level 3, when the number became real. At 31, the account crosses $100,000 on an unremarkable Sunday morning while you're eating cereal standing at the kitchen counter, still in the shirt you slept in. You stare at the number for longer than it deserves. 6 figures. It doesn't feel like the movies promised. Nothing lights up, nothing changes about the room you're standing in. You finish the cereal. 3 weeks later, the market drops 19% in 6 weeks. Your $100,000 becomes $81,000 in a Tuesday afternoon glance at your phone during your lunch break. This is the first real test, and it doesn't feel like a test while it's happening. It feels like watching $19,000 evaporate while you sit at your desk doing nothing about it, because there's nothing productive to do about it. Danny, meanwhile, gets a promotion that same month. $9,200 more a year. Within a month, there's a new truck parked in his driveway. This one's $610 a month, with heated seats he mentions twice at lunch. You don't say anything. It's his money, earned honestly, spent on something he wants. But you notice, quietly, doing the math in your head, that his monthly obligations went up by more than the raise did, once insurance and taxes are factored in. You keep the $19 watch, keep the transfer running, now $310 a month, straight through the crash, because a wiser and more boring version of the plan says selling now locks in a loss you don't actually have yet. A loss that only becomes real the moment you sell. 14 months later, the account isn't just back to $100,000. It's at $148,000. The shares you bought in the panic, cheap, while everyone else was selling, turned out to be the best purchases you made all year, though you didn't feel brave buying them. You felt sick. Here's the part that's hard to explain to someone who hasn't lived it. The crash didn't feel like an opportunity while it was happening. It felt like $19,000 quietly disappearing from a number on a screen. The opportunity only existed in hindsight, which is exactly why almost nobody takes it in real time, and why almost everybody claims afterward that they would have. You start reading more. Not obsessively. Just enough to understand what an expense ratio is, why a target date fund exists, what actually happens inside a 401k match. You realize the company's 4% match has been sitting there the whole time, and you've only been capturing half of it. You fix that within the week. It's the single easiest raise you'll ever get, and it costs you nothing except 10 minutes of attention on a Tuesday afternoon. That same year, you open a Roth IRA alongside the 401k because a coworker's offhand comment sends you down a rabbit hole one slow Sunday. The pitch, once you understand it, is simple. Pay the tax now while your salary is still relatively modest, so the withdrawals decades from now, after everything has grown, arrive untaxed. You max the contribution limit for the year, a few $1,000s you feel every month, and don't touch it again until you're well past the age most people start thinking about it. It isn't glamorous. Nobody throws a party for correctly using a tax-advantaged account. But 15 years later, the decision quietly returns more than almost anything else you did. Level 4. The crossover. You're 35. The number is $412,000. One Thursday morning, your car. A different old car by now, but still an old car. Needs new brakes. $680. 2 years ago, this would have meant checking the checking account balance twice before committing to it. This time, you glance at the estimate, nod, and hand over a card without doing math in your head at all. That night, almost as an experiment, you calculate something you've never bothered calculating before. What the portfolio earned last year, in dollars, from growth and dividends alone, with no new contributions counted. $29,600. Your salary that year, after the last 2 raises, was $71,000. The number sits with you for a while, longer than the $100,000 milestone did. Your money made more last year than you made in some entire years of your 20s. It didn't clock in. It didn't sit in traffic on the way there. It didn't have a bad Monday. This is the crossover, and it doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, in a spreadsheet, on a Thursday night, next to a brake repair invoice you barely looked at. Around this time, you meet Priya, transferred in from another branch, sharp, confident, driving a car that costs more than your first car and your second car combined. She looks, by every visible measure, more successful than you. New apartment downtown, vacations that show up in photos every few months, a closet that looks like a catalog spread. She's not doing anything unusual. She earns well and she's enjoying it, which again is a reasonable choice to make with money you earned. But one lunch, half joking and half not, she mentions that she can't remember the last month she didn't carry a balance on something. Not recklessly, just consistently, month after month. The apartment, the car, the trips, all of it requires the paycheck to arrive, every time, without fail, indefinitely, for as long as the lifestyle exists. You don't say anything about your own numbers. You've learned by now that this isn't a conversation people generally want to have over lunch, and that looking rich and being rich are frequently two unrelated projects running in two entirely different people's lives at the exact same time, in the exact same office. Level 5, choosing instead of having to. At 39, your manager offers you a promotion. More money, more hours, a title with more weight to it, and a level of stress that everyone who's held the role describes, unprompted, as a lot. You think about it for 4 days, you turn it down. Nobody in the building understands why. From the outside, it looks like you left money on the table for no reason at all. From the inside, the math looks completely different. The portfolio sits at $890,000. At a conservative 4% withdrawal rate, that's already generating more than enough to cover your actual expenses, which have stayed almost embarrassingly stable this whole time, because you never let the lifestyle catch up to the balance the way it caught up to Danny's or Priya's. The raise would have been optional income stacked on top of a life that already works. The stress would not have been optional at all. That's the distinction that starts mattering more than any number. Having to versus choosing to. For 17 years, every financial decision you made was in service of not having to. Somewhere in your late 30s, without a specific moment marking the transition, you crossed over into choosing to, and you almost missed it happening. You help your sister cover a $4,000 emergency, a car repair she couldn't manage on her own, and don't think twice about it, because twice thinking is a thing you used to do about $40, not $4,000, and the muscle for worrying about numbers that size has simply gone quiet. You still wear the watch. The strap's been replaced once, glued once. People assume correctly that you just don't care much about watches. They assume incorrectly that this is because you can't afford a different one. Your partner, Maren, finds out the real number almost by accident, the year you turn 40. A tax document left open on the shared laptop. She doesn't say anything for a full day. That night, over dishes, she finally asks the question you've been quietly dreading since you met her. Why you still drive the same car, still hesitate over a $60 dinner, still wear a $19 watch, when none of it is necessary anymore. You don't have a clean answer. The honest one comes out slower than you expect. It was never really about the car or the watch. It was about not becoming someone whose peace depended on the next paycheck arriving on time, the way it had depended on that for almost 2 decades. The frugality outlived its original purpose a while ago. You just hadn't noticed it turn into identity instead of strategy. Maren doesn't ask you to change. But the conversation shifts something. The following spring, you take the trip you've been postponing for 6 years. Nothing extravagant, 4 days, paid for in cash, without a single moment of hesitation at the register. It's the first purchase in years that isn't justified by a spreadsheet first. It feels, oddly, like practice for something. Danny, now on truck number 3, mentions at lunch that he's picking up weekend shifts to cover a repair on the house. He's not in trouble exactly. He's fine. He's just permanently, structurally, 1 paycheck ahead of comfortable instead of 1 paycheck behind it, which, you realize quietly, describes almost everyone you've ever worked with, including the ones who look the most successful from across a parking lot. Level 6. The part nobody warned you about. At 44, you leave, quietly. No party, because you don't tell most people the real reason, only that you're taking some time. The portfolio, after 1 more strong year and 1 flat one, sits at $1.14 million. Withdrawal, conservatively, covers your expenses with room to spare, the way it's covered them for years without you noticing the exact moment it started. The first month feels like vacation. The second month feels like vacation that's starting to feel strange around the edges. Here's what nobody warned you about. For 21 years, the answer to what do you do had a one-sentence answer ready to go. Now it doesn't. At a cookout in your fourth month off, someone asks the question, casually, the way people always ask it, and you find yourself fumbling for a sentence that doesn't sound like bragging or like avoidance. You settle for "I'm between things," which is technically true and somehow harder to say out loud than the actual truth would be. Your friends are still 14, 15, 20 years from their own version of this. When they talk about work, a difficult boss, a looming deadline, a raise they're angling for, you used to have something to add. Now you mostly listen. It isn't that you don't care. It's that the shared language you used to have with almost everyone your age quietly stopped applying to you, one conversation at a time, and nobody handed you a replacement for it. You call Ellen, retired 2 years now herself, and tell her, half joking, that the money part turned out to be the easy part. She doesn't sound surprised at all. "Nobody warns you about the quiet," she says. "They only ever warn you about being broke." You think about that for days, longer than you expected to. There's a specific afternoon, maybe 6 weeks after that call, when the quiet stops feeling like a problem to solve and starts feeling like something closer to spaciousness. You're on the porch on a Wednesday at 2 p.m., a time slot that belonged to a desk for 21 straight years, watching a neighbor mow his lawn, and nothing about the moment demands anything from you. It takes longer than you'd like to admit before that stops feeling like guilt and starts feeling like the entire point. Slowly, you build something to replace the missing structure. Not another job. You're careful about that, because slipping back into full-time work just to solve loneliness would be trading one problem for a more expensive one wearing a different face. Instead, mornings that belong entirely to you, a volunteer commitment 2 mornings a week that has nothing to do with money, afternoons with your sister's kids that working parents never get to have on a Tuesday. The identity doesn't come back all at once as a job title. It comes back slower, from a dozen smaller things, none of which pay you anything, all of which you'd have never had time for at 43, back when every weekday belonged to someone else. Danny is still working, still fine, still 14 or 15 years from any version of this conversation. You have lunch with him sometimes. He still doesn't fully know the number. You've stopped needing him to. The watch is on your wrist right now. Same one, more or less. The strap's third replacement. The face scratched in a way no amount of polishing fixes. You still haven't bought a new one. Not because you can't. Because somewhere along the way, it stopped being a symbol of what you lacked and quietly became a symbol of what you never let yourself need. The vending machine in the old break room probably still takes exact change only. You wouldn't know. You haven't stood in front of it in over a year, and you don't especially miss it. The number that used to feel impossible, $100,000, back when it felt like a finish line, turned out to be closer to a starting line than an ending. The number that finally let you leave wasn't even the biggest one in the story. It was just the number where your life and your expenses finally lined up, permanently, with nobody else's paycheck attached to it. 20 years before everyone else in that building plans to stop working, you already have. Nobody there fully understands how, and most of them never will, because the answer was never a secret. It was $30 a paycheck, left alone for 2 decades, while a $19 watch quietly kept time through all of it. If this story made you think differently about the years that feel too small to matter right now, the $30 transfers, the $75 ones, the ones that don't feel like anything yet, hit like and subscribe for more stories like this one. And I'm curious, what's the smallest amount you've ever started with? Tell me in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.